make sure I left you a message, but it's
Hello, this is Melinda Biesner with ODE. We are just trying to get everything figured out here, so thank you for your patience. We'll be starting shortly.
Hello?
Hi, Russ. This is Melinda.
Yes?
I was able to get that started down here in Studio B, so we are just waiting for a few more people to join us, and then we'll get going. So
Okay. So I'll come back down then.
I'll see you soon. Thank you.
All right, bye.
As we are getting ready to start, I have muted people as they're arriving. Please know, if you're logged onto the computer, please utilize the chat feature. Please utilize the chat feature so that we can communicate. I'm understanding that. Okay, I'm understanding that the sound is okay. We're going to keep trying to improve on the sound. Just 1 second, please. Okay, we got a little bit of background noise. I'm just trying to see how to address that. Okay, everyone is currently muted. We'll be starting shortly. Okay, hello, this is Melinda Biesner with ODE. In the room with me is my colleagues, Russ Sweet and Lisa Plum. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. We have a lot of things that we're going to cover. So we're going to start off with Russ talking about private school consultations. We have some information for you regarding the budget. We have new census data. We want to talk to you about private school allocations and then just a few other key things. We had talked previously about possibly having preliminary allocations at this time. We found out from USDE that they were not able to meet that. So we will not have them for a little bit, but we have a lot of great information to help you consider when you look towards the budget. Again, just going to talk briefly about IndyStar and what we've been doing since a number of you guys have turned in your reviews. Touch briefly on the spring regional monitoring sessions for those that are being monitored this coming spring. A couple of you guys are being monitored in the next 2 weeks. And then if there's any topics from the coordinators that you would like to discuss, please type them into the chat and we will address that. Okay. I'll be monitoring the chat as we go. Okay. A few people are having problems with the sound. If you are, sometimes you might need to exit, then call back in. Occasionally that does help. We are recording this entire presentation, and we will be posting this presentation onto the web too. So I'm going to, okay. Oh, we got a couple of good things coming through on the chat. Again, any topics, please utilize the chat feature. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Sweet, and he will be talking to you about private schools.
Good morning. Sorry about the delay today. Anyway, I'd like to spend some time talking about private school consultations and kind of update you on where we are with private schools. So if you want to forward a couple of slides there. We had some non-regulatory guidance that was released on November 21st, 2016. The full title is Non-Regulatory Guidance, Fiscal Changes and Equitable Service Requirement under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 as amended by the Every Student Succeeds Act. It's a long title, but it came out in November, on November 21st of 2016. And it further clarifies the big changes that are in ESSA regarding private schools. And they are significant. There's a lot that's the same, but there's a lot that is different, particularly in the Title I world. The first thing is that every state is required to have a state-appointed ombudsperson. And that person is responsible for monitoring and ensuring compliance with the private school regulations under the federal statute. And we're in the process of finalizing an interim appointment to that position because the requirements that came out in November said that we had to have that in place before consultations begin for the 2017-18 school year, and we know that a lot of districts will begin those consultations probably late February, early March. So we have to have that position in place. There are some rules around consultation that take place. One of the ones that probably will have the most effect on districts is that we now as a state, in fact this is one of the roles of the ombudsperson, is that they are going to have to collect that documentation on consultation from school districts. We still don't have the mechanics of that worked out yet, but that is something that we'll probably be having to implement throughout, probably no later than the end of the school year. We'll want to see those documents around consultation. Equitable share calculations for Title I. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail, but that has changed. Only in the Title I world. All of the other calculations for equitable services under the other titles pretty much remains the same as it was under NCLB. And then the last thing that I want to alert you to is that we have a state private school advisory committee that has been meeting since early September to work through the regulations that are in ESSA to try to identify what the responsibilities are of the state, what the responsibilities are of the local school districts, and what the responsibilities are of the private schools. And so toward that end, we have an advisory group of probably around, I want to say, close to a dozen folks, maybe a little more, plus internal staff from ODE and the various programs. And so we have 6 private school leaders from around the state. So we are well represented of a number of schools that are in these organizations. So we have both the Eastern and the Western Archdiocese in Oregon. We have the Lutheran Synod, which is actually out of Missouri, but it's the Northwest one, and so we have a representative from there. We have a representative from the Oregon Christian Schools Association, and I think there's a couple of others I'm missing. We also have about 4 or 5 districts that are participating in this to help advise us on some of the regulations and how that would play out in school districts. And so we feel really good about having such a partnership developed with these folks because we've never had that in Oregon before. And so it helps us, it allows the state to make connections directly with private schools a lot easier and to really kind of help work together on both sides for both sides of the coin here, both the private school world and the public school world. And actually, we're starting to kind of look at that as a school system in our advisory meetings to really look at how we can support one another as we move out and move forward. The consultation, I got a question here, still applies only for not-for-profit private schools. So that has not changed. So these are the, you're only working with nonprofit private schools, not the for-profit ones. Okay, so I'm going to move ahead and talk a little bit about consultation first. The slides that you're seeing here were captures from a webinar that Lisa Plum and I attended with the federal government probably back in December. No, it was January, earlier this month. Boy, how time is flying. And we were able to pull a few of those slides and take some snaps of them, or snapshots of them, and that's what you're seeing today. We wanted to get this information out to you as quickly as we could, and we didn't want to wait for the PowerPoint to be posted at the federal website. But basically, around consultation, there's a list of topics that's been expanded to include. So it's the things that were in the guidance previously, and then they've been expanded to how the proportional share or proportionate share of the funds is determined. So you really are going to be needing to explain how you determine the amount of money that you're setting aside on behalf of the private school. You're going to need to continue to talk about how they're going to be provided directly or through separate government agency, consortium, entity, or a third-party contractor. There's a number of possibilities there, and even though we don't quite have all the answers to the questions you might have about that, the various parties that can deliver service, we do want to make you aware that you know, they are probably expanding some of those definitions around who can provide service. And so I think the reason why a separate government agency is there is because there is some ability within the new statute to have the state step in and handle the consultation and even provide or contract to provide the services in the event that a private school and district cannot come together on some sort of an agreement. So that's new, but it is something that you know, just being aware, making them aware of what their rights are as far as accessing these services. Whether to pool funds, and basically pooling funds means that if the funds for a particular private school are so inadequate that you can't really do a program, intervention program, what other options do you have with those funds? And there's a lot of options under the new guidance, and you know, one is to pool the resources for all the private schools within a school district and sort of kind of blanket all of them with the services that are needed, or you can pool it with other federal funds such as Title II to do specifically around professional development, things like that. So there are some options around how to use your Title I funds with regard to pooling. When including the approximate time of day services will be provided, and whether to consolidate Title I equitable service funds with funds available for services to private school children under other ESE programs. So I kind of briefly alluded to that already. So, you know, the consultation that you're going to be doing with the private schools is really going to take a broader role, and so we will be providing you guidance on that as we go. Some other changes, so the next slide. Other changes, the written affirmation that consultations occurred must provide the option for private school officials to indicate that such officials' belief that timely and meaningful consultation has not occurred, or that the program design is not equitable with respect to eligible private school children. So they have an option of kind of making their voice heard, and this is one of those situations where we would be collecting that documentation at the state, and the ombudsperson would be reviewing that and trying to do some sort of work with the school district and the private schools to see how that process can be changed. So there are probably a lot of other little nuances to consultation that we're still trying to wade through, and we will be updating our checklists and things like that so that you, as you begin this process this spring, you'll have the latest information on that. Now I would like to move to allocating funds for equitable services. And this only applies to Title I, but there's a slide here that has a lot of information. And so what I want to bring to your attention is that the private school proportional share for Title I must be off of the top of the district's Title I allocation from ODE. So what this means is that rather than in the past, you were able to take all of your district set-asides, and really the proportional share that was determined to go to the private school was based on the building allocations. And now we are looking at, now that we're required to have districts determine that proportional share off the top of their allocation. And that is going to have an impact on some districts, a significant impact on some districts. And so we want to make you very aware of this right now, and before I go too far into that, I guess there's a couple of questions about consultation that I need to take care of. Okay. All right. Will consultation forms be updated in Transact? The answer is yes. The still unknown is when, okay? But I think
they're trying to have it done by April. I just sent some feedback into their initial forms, but they know that it needs to be done prior to the spring.
Okay. So when should consultations take place? Well, the initial consultation for the 2017-18 school year should be taking place sometime March, April, that period of time. We'd like to see those sewed up and finished up by the end of the school year so that when school resumes in the fall, you're ready to go, okay? And things are ready to go and things are in place and the program can begin as soon as possible. What we don't want to see are consultations that begin in September for the 2017-18 school year. I think we've allowed that in the past, and we've said, you know, we use that as an opportunity to educate districts on getting this done earlier rather than later. So we want to really encourage people to do that. At this point, we hope that every district has moved past the fall consultation for the upcoming school year. The reason for that is that the statute indicates that the programs need to begin as soon as possible to the beginning of the school year. And when consultations wait until the fall, sometimes programs do not get up and running until mid-year. Okay? So give yourself a lot of time to do this. So,
yeah, we have one more question. If you're using funds for class size reductions, do you still have funds going to the private school?
Yes.
It's off the top.
It's off the top. Okay. All right. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the allocating, and I really can only speak probably the most to Title I. I'm still learning about what the other programs are, you know, what kinds of changes are there in the allocations for that. So you have a slide here that sort of explains overall. So if we look at a district, and it never works out this perfectly, but anyway, a district gets $1 million for their Title I allocation, and they look at the number of private school low-income children and the number of public school low-income children, and you see it's divided by schools there. So you're looking at all of your students to determine what the share is that should be off the top. And so we see that we have total in the 4 schools, we have 1,350 students, and we have 150 private school students that are in poverty. So that equals 1,500. And so basically what we're looking at is we want to see, we kind of divide that 150 students we want to get a percentage of students that are in private schools that are in poverty that would qualify for these, you know, that would qualify for funding in your school. So you do still look at individual school populations of your funded schools to determine this. Okay, so in this case, they had 150 students. That amounted to 10% of the students of this in this school district were eligible for Title I services. They were private school students, low-income students. And so they get about 10% of the overall allocation. So the school's allocation, or the district's allocation, was $1 million, and they would get $100,000 of that as their proportional share. Okay, so this kind of gives you a little bit of how this is determined. So you look at your school populations, you look at your poverty students in your schools, and you look at the private school population that are in poverty, and you add that all up, and you get your percentage of proportional share. So if we go to the next slide, you will see that we already kind of calculate that for you through the targeting page on the budget narrative. So this would be, in this particular case, you would use 0.59% of your total allocation for 2017-18 and apply that as the proportional share of funds that need to be set aside for private school participation. That's overall. Now, if you've got multiple school districts that are, private schools that are participating, then you can, you know, divvy that down by a per child amount or however you want to do it. But this is the proportional share that is for all of the private schools in your district.
Number of questions there.
Yeah, I'm sure there are.
Okay. First question, how can we finalize their allocation when we don't know our grant amount until early August?
Okay. So what we're going to do for the spring, and I'm going to look to my colleagues here so that I'm making sure I communicate this clearly, is once we get preliminary allocations, we're going to want you to apply this year's percentage to that in order to determine that amount. That's what we want you to do initially. The steps after that we're still trying to figure out, but we want you to at least alert them that based on your preliminary allocations for 2017-18, and we don't know when those will come out, we hope, you know, sometime this spring, we want you to apply this year's percentage to that to determine the total amount of set aside that you should plan on for the 17-18 school year. I know that because we had hoped to have preliminary allocations out now or at this point in the year, we would be talking some pretty real numbers. Since we don't have that, I think once you go through some of the things that Melinda's going to be talking about later, you may be able to estimate kind of where you're at for next year, and then go from there. I know it's not going to be exact, and it never is, even when we were doing it under the old system. It was never really exact until you had those final allocations. But we want you to at least start the consultation process with a kind of in the ballpark figure. Okay.
Shouldn't we consult with private schools in the spring for the following year?
Absolutely.
Are you only counting students attending Title I-A funded schools, or is it all students in the district? Okay, it's only the students that would attend the private school that would attend a Title I school in your district. It's not all the students in the private school. It's not like Title II-A funding, proportional shares. This is only for Title I, okay? And it still goes back to you're only counting the private school students in poverty who would attend a Title I funded school in your district. Use this target.
Use that target. That's what that targeting page percentage actually calculates for you.
Okay. In addition to the question about allocations, we don't know which students will qualify until they arrive in the fall, are tested, and we get income eligibility information. That's the finalized numbers.
Right. So what you're going to do is base it on current year, what you did, who you served currently. That's the best you can do for consultation, is to estimate based on what you already know, what you already have for the current year. So obviously, there may be some changes. If you can work with your private schools during this process and maybe make that a point of consultation about what's the soonest we can get this, and is there any information that the private school can provide you now that's a little more closer to the target than just kind of guessing based on this year's numbers that you actually have in the budget narrative. These are really good questions, and I'm glad you're thinking it through. It helps us think it through. But I think, you know, we're kind of playing with numbers that we are currently working with, and we know that we've been working with this year, and kind of at least giving us a starting point for the consultation process. The actual amounts and things like that probably won't be finalized until you get some final allocations and things like that, but we want you to at least start with that. You kind of have an idea of what you can afford and what you can't afford. A
few more questions. How do private schools identify low-income children?
Okay, there's a number of ways that they can do that. We really don't want districts imposing their methodology on the private school. We would prefer that since they have to collect the information for you, it's best if they use their methodology and that you're aware of what they're doing. So some schools, private schools, do participate in the school nutrition programs, and so if they've got that data, they can present that to you. They may, you could suggest, or you could show them an income survey that they could use. I wouldn't require them to use it, but they could do that. Some schools have scholarship programs for low-income students. You can certainly use that, but work with them on how you are going to determine the eligibility. So it could be things like I've suggested, an income survey that parents fill out and return. Just understand that private school parents sometimes are reluctant to submit this information to the private school if they know that the state's going to be, or a school district's going to be looking at it. So in as much as possible, work with them on their systems for determining poverty.
Another question that came up, for those of us using CEP, Community Eligibility Provision, and no free and reduced lunch applications, are we using 100% as all students receive free under CEP, or is it based on percentage times 1.6 per school submitted in April with CEP?
Okay.
Person that wrote this needs some clarification on, are you asking when you're trying to calculate the private school children? And this is the targeting page. We've talked a lot about this, about how you enter your numbers in the targeting page. But is the question about the private school children, or you just need a little more clarification on that?
That's a question we might need to actually take down and do some discussion about that.
I just don't have a clear understanding what they're asking.
Yeah.
But as far as the private school percentage on the targeting page, that is what you would use. The CEP calculation that you were describing is how you determine not the district schools. But it's the private school percentage. But again, as Russ said, we can certainly get more clarification on that. So good question.
Next question, to make sure I'm understanding correctly, this is done only if a private school is choosing to participate.
Correct. Correct.
Are funds still connected to state testing requirements and state-approved non-religious curriculum?
Okay. I think the implication of that question, or what I think I'm hearing out of that, is around the question of non-secular, non-ideological curriculum is still the norm for private school interventions. State testing, I know some private schools do participate in that, but I'm not sure there's a direct connection with what we're trying to do as in Title I.
Okay. Question, in this example, the 0.59% is the full private school percentage. This is for all private schools in the district. Would we then use 16, 17 student numbers at each individual private school to give them their estimated, for 17 and 18, their piece of the private school pie?
I think I said earlier that you might use a formula like a per child amount to divvy it up between the private schools that are participating, and I think that's basically the answer to the question is yes, you would.
Sorry, Russ, to interject. The key thing on this slide is the 0.59% is when you take your total allocation, you use that percentage to your total allocation. That gives you your big private school pie, and then you have to use your individual formula of how to divvy that up. That's where the percentage really comes. In the past, people use this percentage to try to determine how much you set aside in the district set aside. Now you're using this percentage for just the total allocation. Off the top, this is how much all the private schools choosing to participate. That's the big pie, and then you have to divvy it up.
Okay, I would like to add one more little wrinkle to this whole discussion, and I know it's going to open up a kettle of worms, a lot of questions, but one of the things that we did hear from the U.S. Department of Education, and we were actually tuned into the webinar put on by the Office of Non-Public Education. So this is Maureen Dowling and her shop, and this is right from their own words, is that districts can, out of this proportional share that you're setting aside at the very top, off the top, you can take a reasonable amount of administrative costs for this purpose. I think we all learned that under NCLB, with the requirements that were there, that this is a huge responsibility and requires a lot of time on the part of districts to implement this and to work with this. And we have continued to push districts to not just do a one and done with regard to consultation, but it's an ongoing process, and that you're building relationships in the process. The U.S. Department recognizes that and allows you to take a reasonable amount of admin costs out of the proportional share for private schools in order to administer this program within your district. Now, we did not get a determination on what the maximum is or what the minimum is. It just said reasonable. So we will probably have some discussions with our advisory group, including school districts, as to what reasonable is, and we certainly would like your input into that. I can't imagine that reasonable would be above what you take for regular admin off of Title I anyway, but you know, it would be beyond that. But I think we don't really have a defined amount for that. So are there questions about that?
Haven't gone to the admin. Another question is, understand how to get the percentage of funds for equitable share for private schools. However, do we pull the amount for parent involvement first, then take the total amount left and apply the percentage to allocate equitably to private schools, knowing that equitable percentage of the parent involvement funds will also be applied to private schools?
Okay. I still don't have a clear answer on that, so I would like to take that question and get back to you on that, because it is off the top, so it's even before the parent involvement. However, there is an impact on those of you that take that 1% for parent involvement that you're required to do, and there are some, you know, I think that part of what we heard, and Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong here, but part of what we heard is that, yes, you do have that equitable share or that proportional share for private schools, but that counts against their overall allocation, as I recall. So it's not in addition to, it's part of that overall allocation. So right. When you take that proportional share off and then you have the 1%, if private schools, you've got participating private schools, then part of that overall is going to be applied to their parent involvement pieces, okay? But before, you know, I mean, I'm pretty certain on that, but we want to make sure that we get that in writing to people, because it could be kind of confusing as to how you calculate that. Those are kind of
basic questions are coming through. Kind of like, is it off the top, general pie, or do you separate it? This is the parent involvement, this is that,
right,
and the rest. Okay. I think you're caught up. Here's your next slide.
Okay. So kind of what we're coming soon, is the role of the state ombudsperson. We're clarifying that. Probably what I will say this, that one of the recommendations that we are forwarding with this is that, you know, IDEA has private school requirements. We have worked with private schools through the general ed programs here at the department, and then, of course, the ESSA private schools. So all three of those parties have a vested interest in private schools and work closely with private schools. And so one of the things that we have determined that we really think would be helpful to the field is to make that, to expand the role of the ombudsperson beyond what is just in Title I law or within ESSA, and sort of make that the first stop that the field and districts can use to, you know, can contact, and then from there we can work out from there if there's more specific information you need from a specialist within a program. But I think that's kind of generally where we're landing with that. And I think the other thing is that this person is going to need to really understand the private school world as well as the public school world, and try to blend those two and understand that and work well with that, while trying to remain neutral and in issues of dispute which may come up. And so there's a whole lot of things that's kind of exciting, but at the same time it's like we're still trying to figure out how this is all going to play out. we are certainly going to be putting further guidance from us on calculating the equitable proportion for Title 1A. I say that, that's the first priority, I think, is to get that out to folks so that they understand how to do this, because that's probably where you're going to, that's going to be your first big question. I don't know what that guidance is going to look like yet. We're just going to have to work through that here. And then we're going to continue to keep folks in the loop about what it is that, how private school implementation from ESSA, and as well as some, and in partnership with the IDEA folks and the general ed folks, really what we can do to serve private schools and public schools in the future from ODE. So that's what's coming. Any other questions?
Nope. Nothing else. If there's any other questions, please send them via the chat. We are recording all of this, so we'll continue to check the chat. Okay, now let's talk about the money. Budget considerations. Okay, as we said before, we were hoping to get, we were kind of promised that we might be getting preliminary allocations as early as December. Well, change occurred. That did not happen. But as we've always said, is we are going to be as transparent as possible. We have received the new census information. And I've been trying to share, how do you find your census information? How does this impact your allocations? It's all the information that gets shared with us, we try to share with you. So, if you have not been on the census website, we have provided you the link to look at your census data. You go to census.gov, and you're looking for the SAIPE Interactive Data Tool. Okay, once you're on that site, there's a few filters you're going to apply. You're looking for basically school district data. Just look in the state of Oregon, find your school district, and then you can see the current year. We're always 2 years behind, so when the current year is 2015. That's the census data that we're looking at. Last year's data would have been 2014. Now, we have basically provided you a screenshot of one of our districts. All of this is public information. So anyone can look up any district anywhere in the United States. So in here you will see, down here, thanks. You will see that basically the year, this is the current year. Well, over on the left-hand side is where my filters took place. The school district filtered just to Oregon, looking at one school district, and just looking at 2015. These are the numbers that will be used for the upcoming allocations. Now, and I had to click on the table tab, because if you had on map, it would just show you the map of Beaverton and not give you the numbers. You got to click on the table tab. Now, you want to compare it to the previous years. Under years, you can click multiple years, and you will see, I decided to look at the last 5 years of data. You will see basically how things have changed. Now, what numbers are really critical when you're looking at this? Across the top on the table, you have the school district name, the grade, total population. What you really want to know is the last 3 columns. Relevant ages, 5 to 17 in families in poverty, and then the ratio. Why this is important is we talked to you guys about in the summer that the Title 1A allocation is split into 4 pots of money. The basic allocation, which is where you get the majority of your Title I funds, is in order to be eligible for that, you need at least 10 children of poverty per your census data. So that is the third to the last column. You need to have at least the number 10 there. In this school district, they're well over 10. But the second pocket of money is the concentration. More than 6,500 children of poverty or higher than 15%. As you can see in here, the ratio, which is the second to last, they're not over 15%, and they also do not have more than 6,500 children of poverty in those ages. So the concentration grant, they would not receive money from there. The last two, targeted and EFIG, Educational Financial Incentive Grant, they're the same, but they're much smaller amounts of allocation. You have to have at least 10 children of poverty and higher than 5%. So again, third to the last column, you're looking for the number 10, and your ratio's got to be higher than 5%. Now, people are asking, okay, how does this help me with the allocations? Well, if you see that your ratio has gone down, then you need to anticipate, even if you don't quite agree with the census poverty, you have to kind of anticipate that your allocation is going to potentially go down. Some people have looked at what was my total allocation this year, divided by the number of students I have, and kind of did, this is what I received as a per pupil amount. Apply the same thing to your new number. Lots of different budget considerations of how to do it, but these are the numbers that you need to look at, and then you have to apply these 4 rules. Hopefully you're in all 4, because that keeps the same. And this is where, like, some folks used to be in the concentration and now they've declined, so they're out of it, or last year they weren't in the concentration and they've increased, and now that they're going to even have more money. So we're really trying to, when we hear information, we really just try to share that as much with you. The other consideration is state level data. Oregon's overall population is increasing, but the number of students of poverty is decreasing. We know as a state that's going to, just looking at census data, we're going to have a reduction in our state Title I dollars. So just looking at plain old census, if we actually got the exact same amount, I mean, if Congress funds Title I at the same amount, we'll still see a reduction because of our fewer students according to census. Now, none of us quite know what's going to happen in the next few months. So we don't know if Title I is going to be funded at the same level, if there's going to be a decrease or an increase. We have not. We've asked that question many times to our colleagues. Everyone's kind of waiting to see what the new administration will do. So that is the, hang on, I'm going to check to see. I'm looking to see if I got any questions. Okay, again, questions regarding this, please enter them into the chat. We will be posting this in here. So this is the overall, again, how do you determine it? And if you've never been on the census site, please go there. It has a wealth of information, and this is really what you need to try to start kind of looking at your budgeting. Next few things to consider. Here's the other couple things. I'm not really trying to be the bearer of bad news, just trying to be the bearer of all the news I know. So for 2017-18, many of you that have been in Title I for a while have heard about hold harmless, whereas if you had your allocation last year, if you've declined, we at the state, there was limited that we could take away. You're basically held harmless that you couldn't get much lower than what you had previously. I mean, that's it's not the exact way of saying it, but it was, you couldn't really get too much of a drastic cut. Well, for 2017-18, there is no hold harmless. With ESSA, that now has to be reset. So if you are looking at a significant decrease in the number of students, you can have a significant decrease. There's nothing to stop that. There's nothing to, well, you can't have further. Nope. What the hold harmless does not come into play for next year. The other part of it is, at the state level, for any of our districts that actually had an increase in previous years, we used to take 4% of that towards school improvement. Now, the 4% set aside has now been increased to 7%. So when you're looking at your budgeting, you should also consider that you will automatically off the top have a 3% reduction because the state for school improvement will be taking 3% more. We've talked about the private school proportional share. As Russ said, make sure you're considering that. So whatever you're currently on your targeting page, if you have 2% of equitable share, we showed you 0.59, 2%, that again will come right off the top. So there is no hold harmless for this upcoming year. It's reset. School improvements increase up to 7%. And private schools. For 2018-19, the hold harmless will resume. Couple questions. Yes, the slides will be available on the website following this. Questions regarding hold harmless about Title II. There's a hold harmless in both Title I and Title II. All hold harmlesses are being reset. Eventually in Title II, hold harmless will be eliminated. So we will get more information out on that, but for the 2017, hold harmless is being reset, so there will be no hold harmless. And for a few districts that we've already kind of talked to, that was a surprise, so we want to make sure that was out there. Okay. Covered a number of things. I'm going to continue to monitor the chat regarding the budget. As you all know, I love talking about money, so any questions you might have, love to share. We will, at the very end, we will share with you where this presentation will be at on the new website. It will be under Title I coordinators, and we'll have a link to it at the very end of the website. Okay, hope this was helpful. And again, if you have any questions, if we need to go back to the slides, we will refer to that. Okay, and question about the hold harmless again is, yes, the hold harmless is, that's what we look at the state level. At the district level, that's not something you can take into consideration. But we do know some of our more seasoned federal program administrators have tried to kind of estimate what their allocation is, so they have utilized what a hold harmless would look like. That's why we're sharing with everyone. But when you're doing your district allocations, you're not considering that. Hope that makes sense. Yeah, hold harmless for question was like for any grant. I'm referring to Title I and Title II. That is the current guidance that I've received. For the other titles, I have not received that direct information. But for Title I and for Title II, hold harmless is being reset this year. Okay. Keep them coming. Okay, IndyStar, your second favorite thing to talk about. Okay, you've all seen this slide before, hopefully. Yeah. Thank you for everyone that turned in their IndyStar plans, submitted their district annual reviews this past fall. We very much appreciate that. We did have a number of you do that. We want to just kind of remind folks that if you turned them in and it was sufficient, then you just need to review your plans again, basically towards the end of this school year. Let me kind of show you the next slide. This is what we're currently looking at as a state. We know that approximately 48% of all of our Title I schools did submit their district annual review, and we accepted it as a state as a sufficient review. Everything looked great. And your next steps are you just have to do the annual review process again by September of 2017. You have to review it once a year. So however your district determines it, you have that process. Some of you will be doing it towards the end of the school year. Some have talked about doing it in August and September. So it's a not hard, fast deadline of September 2017. We just want to see it, that you review your plans once a year. We had a deadline for this past fall because we need to have all plans in there. Then we had about another 22% of all of our schools. They did submit, but the review was insufficient. We will be sending feedback to all of our districts that we had some insufficient reviews. Some of it was we just need more information of kind of how the review took place. It wasn't clear, so it might just be a brief feedback back to us. But this was a very large task for us, as it was for you too, and we're just trying to get a little more feedback. But seeing over there in the far right-hand column, this is where we are right now a little concerned. We currently have about 30% of our Title I schools that did not submit anything. Now, we are in the process of going to each of those schools' plans, reviewing what's in IndyStar and providing feedback. Some folks we know, they either did not complete the district annual review process. They went through the entire thing within the school and district, but the school never submitted to the state. That's a simple click. We can help through that. There's others that they have not been in IndyStar for quite some time. So we are spending right now quite a bit of time trying to focus on who has not submitted, reviewing what's in the IndyStar if there's anything, and looking at how that will impact our monitoring for next year. We have already said multiple times that if that wasn't turned in, it will increase your chances of being monitored. And we have talked here at ODE that some of our schools and districts that initially we're not going to be monitored for a couple of years will be on the monitoring cycle for this upcoming year because of this. So we are trying to provide feedback to everyone that did the right thing, submit and stuff like that. We completely appreciate that. We're going to provide you feedback quickly. Right now, we're trying to first look through everyone that did not submit and trying to go through all of that process. So we appreciate your patience, appreciate everyone that got this task done. Very helpful, but we still have some work to do with some of our schools. Couple questions, let's see here. I'll come back to private school. Questions about how do we know if it was accepted or if it was insufficient. Again, we will be providing feedback to schools and districts. All that submitted, right there, you did a great thing that you submitted. So we're trying to first talk everyone that did not submit. That's been a lengthy process, and then we're going to give you feedback by March if you did not submit. Excuse me, if it was insufficient. If insufficient is just like we just need more clarity. That's the key thing. Many of you, as we were going through the process, we might have sent you a quick email. Can you just give me a little information on how you did this? Because some folks, their process, they worked with someone during that time, and when we saw the review, there was very few comments or no comments, but we had a description of the process that the reason why there's no comments is because you met with the other person, and that was sufficient for us. So those were accepted. Others, we might not have known all of that, so that's kind of the feedback. So if you submitted, right now you're in good shape. You're not going to have an increase in monitoring. We're focusing on that 30% right now that we're not sure what is occurring right now. So we're trying to get more feedback. Okay. If you are worried at all, you can always contact your individual Title I rep, and we can give you individual feedback on that too. Okay. When will the monitoring schedule be posted for the 2017-18 school year? We typically announce the next monitoring usually in our spring Title I coordinators conversation, which I believe is scheduled in April right now. Our next Title I coordinators conversation is scheduled for April 18th. So that's typically when we will announce it. And again, that's when we're also looking at which additional schools are going to be in there. Question, can I backtrack a little bit? Okay. Let me wrap this up, then we got a few more questions about private schools and budget, so we'll come back to that. So I did put in here, because it was posted, a couple people continue to kind of ask, how do you submit your annual review again? So if you need a reminder about submitting, we've had put all these slides in. I'm not going to cover it, but it's here in the PowerPoint if you need to go over it again. Your step 1, step 2, having the district review it, then the district needs to accept. Remember, blue or green, go Seahawks, even though our season ended. I'm sad, but, and that was kind of the key, is a lot of people, some people we saw did the return with revisions, and then nothing happened after that. So you want to revise and submit, to where it's eventually, you will see that it's submitted here. You'll see that on the tabs, and then state receives it. So again, not going over it too much, but if you need a brief heads up, you see that. Okay, couple questions coming back. Private school. Russ, a question again for the 2016-17. Did private school still get proportional share if the funds were used for class size reduction?
Yes, I think we answered that. Yeah.
That,
It's off the top.
it's off the top. Okay. Low. Question about, are we going to give districts a heads up if they should anticipate a significant hit due to a hold harmless reset? We have been in communication looking at the current census data. I've now talked to 2 separate school districts about just looking at the census information. We're going to continue to flush out what we are anticipating on the allocations. So as soon as we know more information, we will certainly talk to school districts. The best thing I can say right now is analyze your own data using the census information. And once we get more information from the feds about what the overall Title IX budget will be, that's when we'll really know who's going to have some significant hits and about the hold harmless. I would just say if you were anticipating that your Title IX allocation could not be reduced more than 15%, that's not correct anymore. At one point, people thought that, and it's like, no, we do have districts in the past years that have had an 80% cut. We know this year we're going to have some districts at over 20%. We have been in communication with those districts that right now that we're seeing a significant cut in their census data, and we're going to continue to flesh that out as we learn more. Question about, are we reviewing the actual CAP plan or just our review tool? Everyone that submitted their district annual review, we just reviewed your tool. We reviewed what you sent to us, the review tool. For those that did not submit anything, we're looking at everything that's in your IndyStar plan right now. So we're basically reviewing it at the state level to see do you have a compliant plan in. Some folks, when we went in, we noticed that they just didn't hit the submit button. It was still with the district had accepted the review or did revise and submit, and the school never submitted it to the state. So it's for those that did not submit. When we dig into your overall CAP plan, is what does it currently look like? Okay, question about, so the district needs to review school plans again by September 2017, and you'll capture what's in the system then. How about the district IndyStar? So again, for school level plans, the district must annually review the plan once a year. We put in the timeline that it had to be submitted by this fall 2016. Once you've done this, as a district, you need to set a plan or process to when you're going to annually review the plan again. And some do it at the end of each year. Some will be doing it during the summer. Others have indicated that they're going to do it in August and September. You just need to annually review it once a year. The district level plan, the IndyStar, that's not what we're talking about. Our team is about school level planning. Your district caps, I know there's talks about some changes there. Jan McCoy is your contact for the district level cap. And if you have questions about reviews for that, or upcoming submissions, Jan's a great person to talk to you about that. This is all about the school level planning. Question, are we having Odyssey this summer? Great question. Colleagues, how would we? Okay, Russ will take that on.
Okay, we will not be having Odyssey as it has been in the past. There is some discussion that's still being finalized here at the department of expanding some of the other summer activities we have to include that, so that we have, you know, one or something of that nature where it's a little bigger and has a wider menu of options and choices for sessions and things of that nature. We are also looking at doing some regional work or something of that nature too. Right now, the budgets that we've been looking at as we're just about to enter a legislative session, you know, there's some cuts at the state level in just funding in general, and so we are on travel restrictions and things of that nature, and so we are looking at what we can do and how we can best work and serve our districts in other ways other than doing conferences. And so that's a long answer to a short question, but I can tell you that Odyssey is probably not going to happen this coming summer. But that doesn't mean we're going away.
Question, we are still able to use grade bands to determine Title I eligibility across schools, correct? That is correct. Okay, keep the questions coming. If you're not a Seahawks fan, no comments out there. Not fair. Okay. We're right now in the process of the winter monitoring. We'll be monitoring all those districts that submitted their information, their binders for winter. We'll be doing that in about 2 weeks. We're collecting all that. But let's talk briefly about your spring regional monitoring assistance. Hopefully, everyone that is being monitored this spring has received a letter from ODE. It was sent to your superintendent. You should have also received the email. If you haven't received anything, it's also posted on our website. But spring regional monitoring, again, these sessions is when myself, Lisa, and Russ, we will be at these sessions. We typically, in the morning, we briefly go over what we're looking at in your binders, giving you a brief heads up about what we're looking for in the monitoring and how the process works. Then, usually from around 10 o'clock to the remainder of the afternoon, we do individual appointments where we'll meet with schools. Oftentimes, we'll kind of preview your binders, or if you have questions like, what do I put in this section of the binder, we'll answer all those questions. So March 7th, we'll be at Lane ESD. March 13th and 14th, we'll be at LeGrand High School on March 13th, and on March 14th, we'll be at the Intermountain ESD. For strongly encourage, if you've been being monitored this spring, to attend those sessions. It's a great kind of, you know, a great teachable moment. All of you guys like to write rough drafts. Have the teacher look at your rough draft, see if you're going on the right thing before you turn in your final copy. That's what this is about. Trying to get some feedback from us. Are you on the right page? Is there anything further you need? We answer all those questions and really try to make sure that coming into this monitoring sessions, you have all your information. It's really as low-key, non-stressful as it could be. Some of you guys are laughing out there, but we really do try. Okay. Appointments will be coordinated through Anne. We've sent her email there so that you guys have that. Okay, couple more questions. Okay, we got, thank you, some more feedback about topics for coordinators, so we'll touch that when it comes in there. How soon can districts schedule their appointments for the spring monitoring? You can contact Ann now. She's already starting to schedule. She'll send a generic email out, I know, after this upcoming monitoring, but if you want to schedule your appointment now, you can do that too. So she's prepared for that. The other thing is, some people have asked, if I'm not being monitored, but if I'm brand new, can I come? Absolutely. Certainly can attend. We will, priority is going to go towards the districts that are being monitored. So, but it's great information to be there in the morning to go through what we're looking at. And then it's also, if there's an appointment available, it's always great. It's like if you're setting up your binders for the first year and you're like, is this what I was supposed to put in here? Great information to be there for. So this is not exclusive. If you're not being monitored, you can't come. Everyone's welcome. We love seeing you, but we will take priority towards those that are being monitored. Okay.
Private school question there as well as a...
Let me see if there's... Okay, so here's the topics. So the next one goes to topics from coordinators.
I want to answer a private school question that came across. Let me just read it here. Clarification on whether the private schools just get the off-the-top percent and they then decide how to use it, or do we also need to allocate to them part of our parent involvement and PD? So the off the top, let me just recap that. Off the top, out of that, a district can set aside some reasonable amount for admin costs in order to administer. As far as parent involvement, if you're one of those districts that has to set aside an amount at the district level for parent involvement, that means you've met that threshold of $500,000 or more in your allocation, then you can allocate a portion of that to parent involvement, but it goes against the off the top. So if, let's say, they get $100,000 and you've taken maybe, your parent involvement is maybe $2,000 that they would be entitled to, you would charge that against the $100,000. For PD, I think if within your consultation they want some PD out of that money, that would be out of that money. You don't have to set aside an additional amount out of your PD for that. So we are going to put some more clarification around this, but I think in general, right now, you need to set aside off the top. You can take some admin funds out of that, and then beyond that, I think I'm going to have, initially as we work through this and we try to figure it out, it might be a good time to call us with some of those questions so that we can kind of help you think through it. Anything else because I have a topic here.
No, let's do that topic and we'll hit the rest. Okay,
so earlier in the webinar today, someone asked around the foster care point of contact. So I just want to take a couple of minutes to explain that. Foster care points of contact, if you have followed ESSA too much, a lot or little even, you probably know that foster care students were specifically called out a lot more in this version of the law than they may have been in previous years. And so we have to have a state level point of contact for foster care to work with the Child Welfare Agency, in this case, Department of Human Services, Child Welfare. So we have that established, and our point of contact for the state, between the state and DHS, is Linda Brown, who actually works in the Office of Student Services. So she's our state level one. But then in the law, it also said that districts needed to identify a point of contact, a foster care point of contact that would work with the local child welfare agency in the cases when foster students are being placed, and if there's any discussion or need for some discussion with the district about point of origin, school of origin, transportation issues, and some things like that. And so the way the law read was that districts would only need to identify this person if they were contacted by the child welfare agency in order to do that, which didn't really make a lot of sense to us, and we thought it would be better if districts kind of got out in front of this. And so we asked you to identify a person in your district that a child welfare agency could contact if there was some issues around a foster care student within your district or across districts. So what will happen likely in some cases with these placements is that the first priority that child welfare has to do in placing a child in foster care, once that decision's been made, is to look for relatives. And oftentimes some of those relatives are across district lines. And yet the law wants students to remain in their school of origin, if it's possible, until there's sort of a determination by someone that the best interest placement for that child might be a school other than the one they're currently attending. So we just needed somebody to sort of contact with that. We're still trying to kind of delve into these topics. Linda Brown has been working with Catherine Stelzer over at the Department of Human Services. In fact, we had a meeting this morning because there are laws around who makes these determinations for best interest of the child and things like that. And we're going to have to try to propose some rule changes and some regulation changes within the law itself to the legislature during this session to try to align that more with what's in the federal statute. But anyway, that said, we just needed that person. I know a lot of questions that I get are, what are they supposed to do? And there are some points of what they're supposed to do within the guidance itself. And we can make that a matter of, I know it kind of when it went out, it was sort of vague, but what we can do is we can point you to the generally the responsibilities of what this point of contact would be. We just want you to have it in place. They don't, they probably won't really need to do anything until the child welfare agency in your community contacts you about a foster care placement.
Okay, thank you, Russ. A couple questions. Can you talk about the requirement for parent and staff surveys in regards to the Title I plan, and where do these go in IndyStar? Oftentimes, parent and staff surveys are part of the comprehensive needs assessment. So right now in IndyStar, every school is limited to 40 files. Some folks will put under parent staff surveys, will total what the surveys are saying and put the results in there. But comprehensive needs assessment, the data and stuff, as a school district, you determine where that's all being collected at. IndyStar is limited to 40 files. So if you want it, put it there, that's fine. The requirement for Title I is that you complete a comprehensive needs assessment. It says once every 4 years when you look through the plan. You review your data every year, but a thorough needs assessment, which is including parent and staff input, oftentimes in the form of surveys. That just needs to be done once every 4 years, and we need to have record that you've done that. So we do not need to, you don't need to upload all those staff surveys or parent surveys into IndyStar. They can be held someplace else. It can locate someplace else. We just need to know that you've done comprehensive needs assessment once every 4 years. Every year you're reviewing your data, but the complete needs assessment once every 4 years. Hope I answered that. Do we have a monitoring checklist that you can send us for what you want in the binders? The monitoring checklist is posted on our website for this upcoming year. If you search ESEA, because we're still under ESEA monitoring, it should bring you up to our monitoring webpage. on that page is this year's checklist. Will monitoring change under ESSA? Yes, in the sense that our checklist does get modified or changed each year. We know this upcoming year we'll have a few more changes. For example, highly qualified under staff this year has been removed from the checklist. Highly qualified for paraprofessionals is still on there. Okay, so each year as requirements change, we do update the checklist. We know under ESSA there'll be some additional changes. For the foster care point of contact in small districts, it makes sense that the point of contact is the superintendent, correct?
It doesn't matter who fills that role. In some cases, yeah, the superintendent could do that. In maybe larger districts, they might have somebody specifically that has more of a knowledge of Title I, and that might be appropriate. So it's whoever you choose.
Another question again about the staff surveys. Do we have samples specifically to Title I? We do not have a sample staff survey posted. We do have some parent surveys that are posted that we use for our on-site visits, but we can look to see if we have a survey that we can post. So that's a great comment. We'll try to add that to our website. Someone else, can we get the link for the census site again? Absolutely. Let me bring you back to that page. This is my new favorite page. Please highlight this page. Here is censusdata.gov, and you're looking for the SAIPE interactive data tool. And then these are the filters. For just school district data, looking for your state, which school district. Some of you guys like to look at all other school districts too. All of this is public information. And then your year or multiple years. Can I review again how we will use our census data to come up with our Title I budget estimate for 17-18? Sure. My colleagues laugh because I love the math. Absolutely. Christmas time from Melinda. Okay. So when you're looking at your census data, again, you want to look at the third column, relative ages of 5 to 17, families in poverty, and then your ratio. Okay. You want to see if 2015, that's the new census data, did your numbers increase or decrease, and also did your ratio increase or decrease? Okay. You want to see that, and then after you're done looking at that, do you qualify for all 4 areas of the Title I again? If they've increased or decreased, you can kind of estimate. I will put some more information. We have a few people leaving here. You can estimate a per child amount on just divide the number of families in poverty by your total allocation. That kind of gives you a per child amount. If you times that, what you had from this year, to what your families of poverty are next year, you can get a rough estimate. And then you have to think, if things stay the same, we get the exact same estimate, at least a 3% cut, because we'll have more taken out for school improvement. Know that as a state we'll get less dollars, so I would say just off the top, you're probably looking at least a 3 to 5% reduction. But these are the numbers you need to kind of estimate if you have a significant cut in decrease in families of poverty or the ratio, some folks did move out of the concentration grant. They were over 15% and now they're under it. So that's going to also take a cut. Okay. I will try to get more information out to people. Okay. Let's see here. Tell people I might reach out to you directly. Can you write down this person's name? I might reach out to you directly, and I can kind of cover over. Happy to do that. In this example, there was a 2% drop for 2014-15. Would that be a significant decrease in funding? So for individual school districts, you have to look at what did you receive funding as last year. Some folks, if the ratio jumped from 10 to 13, could result in a significant increase, and then going from 13 down to 11 could reduce again. So you have to look at the numbers. Census data is always 2 years behind. So when you want to know what your possible allocation is for 2017-18, you're looking at census information from 2015. 2015 is the most current year. Your allocation for 16-17 was based on census data of 2014. So when you see 2014 year, that's what your numbers look like for your current allocation. 2015 is, these are the numbers they're going to use for next year's allocation. Okay. I'll go back. Again, this is our website. If there's anything further, happy to talk about this further with individuals too. Love to talk numbers, math, anything I can do to help there. We'll try to get more information out on this. Our goal would be to try to have this posted by tomorrow. Okay. Again, we are your Title I-A team. Our director is Teresa. Her birthday was yesterday. Wish her happy birthday. I'm Melinda. I'm the district contact for all districts E through P. Then we have Lisa, A through D, Russ, Q through Z again. If you have any questions, this is where the PowerPoint will be posted. On our new website, you can always just search up Title I-A coordinators and it's posted underneath that. Another question came in, what's the time frame for the monitoring technical days? We start our presentations at 8:30 on those days. From 8:30 to 10 is usually the morning presentation, and we start taking appointments after 10 o'clock, and we can be there as late as 4. Okay, if there's nothing further, we'll hang on for a little bit if there's any more questions, but want to just, again, thank everyone for joining us today. We hope this was helpful. Again, we know that there's a lot of information. We will continue to share the information that we receive. Looking forward to seeing everyone in April at the next Title I-A coordinators conversation, but we appreciate you taking the last 90 minutes to be with us today, and thank you once again. Anything from my colleagues?
Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll hang on if there's any direct questions, but I'm just going to mute us for now. Thank you.